Welcome, everyone, to a Wednesday episode of the Call Sheet Podcast here at the Fans First Sports Network. Kevin Smith with you. Beautiful Wednesday morning here on the East Coast as we head towards Memorial Day, unofficial kickoff of summer. I live in a resort town, our cozy little town where I get to park wherever I want. That is disappearing as the East Coast descends upon Ocean City. Good for the property values, bad for the parking, put it that way. But we're not here to talk about that. I have a great subject for today's show. Today's show, we're going to talk about the difference in football between being a position coach, an offensive coordinator, or a defensive coordinator, and a head coach. What's the difference between position coach, coordinator, head coach in terms of your role, your responsibilities, the things you do on a daily basis? Ran into somebody recently, hadn't seen him in a while, and he was asking me about, what are you doing now with coaching? And I told him, I'd step down as the head coach. And we talked briefly about my career, and I've coached in all three roles. And he said, what's the hardest? Is it hardest being a position coach, a coordinator, or a head coach? And I said, you know what, let me think about that. And as I thought about it, I thought, hey, that's a good show. So let's dive in on that subject. What are the big differences? All right, we'll start with position coach. If you are a position coach, you are obviously responsible for a specific group. For my first 10 years in the coaching profession, I was a position coach where I coached, because it was at the high school level, you're generally coaching both sides of the ball. So I was coaching wide receivers and defensive backs. Very complimentary. It was actually very convenient to be able to coach both of those because I could coach them both at the same time. While I'm working with wide receivers, I could put defensive backs out there and we could work on both instruction on both sides. Your primary responsibility as a position coach is development. I really believe that. Now, I'm not saying that's universally true, but in my estimation, it was development. I'm working with this small group of guys, right? If I'm just coaching the defensive backs, now some years that was just the corners or just the safety. Some years it was both. But you're talking about a group of a dozen guys, 15 max. And when I was coaching the wide receivers, it was often smaller. It was 10 to 12. You're working with those dozen or so guys every single day on, first and foremost, fundamentals, trying to help them improve their craft. I remember, coaching the defensive backs, I would start the year with the same drill every single year. It was a drill that we had done in college. Our college coach called it the ABCD drill. And ABCD with defensive backs stood for alignment, back pedal, cushion, and drive. And really what it was a drill designed to get guys great at not getting run past, which is probably job one of a defensive back. Don't give up 6. Don't give up an easy touchdown. And then breaking on a ball. But it was all the technique work that you needed to get great at that particular aspect of playing the position. My back pedal, keeping my cushion, driving on a thrown ball, starting with the alignment. Your alignment is so nuanced as a defensive back. Your alignment varies on so many things: personnel group, splits, hash, where is the ball on the field, et cetera? What coverage are we playing? The nuances to alignment were incredibly important. And if you didn't line up properly, you would compromise coverage. And so every single day, man, you just drilled down on those fundamentals. We did the ABC drill every day. As a position coach, I always had what I called EDDs, a lot of acronyms right here. EDDs, everyday drills. And I would say, all right, let's go EDDs. And they knew right away, first one, ABCD drill. As a wide receiver coach, same deal. I got drills that I'm going to do with them every single day. We have one that we just call perimeter on bags. And perimeter on bags is we put 3 wide receivers out there. There are 2 defensive backs holding bags. I'd say I'm the quarterback, so to speak. I snap the ball. I throw it to one of those 3 wide receivers on a quick perimeter screen, right? Or a quick hitch. They'll all run a 3-step hitch, or they'll all just run what we call smoke, which is 1 step, show your numbers to the quarterback. They don't know who's getting the ball, so I whip it out to one of them, and the other two guys immediately have to go locate the defenders with bags and block them, perimeter blocking. No block, no rock. That is rule number one for us as a wide receiver, right? No block, no rock. If you're not going to block, you're not getting the ball. You better block. If you think wide receiver is about catching touchdown passes, you're sadly mistaken. You better block. And so we start with that and building the fundamentals of all of that. And you are trying to develop these young men every single day by coaching the crap out of them. There is probably more hands-on coaching with actual players as a position coach than in any other role. I mean, as a position coach, you are coaching every rep in practice, in games, every nuance, if you're not giving your player some feedback after every rep, you're not doing your job. I mean, that feedback can be very simple, like, hey, excellent, great execution, or something really, really simple, like sink your hips, sink your hips, keep your feet under you when you're making your cut, whatever it might be. It could be really simple like that. We try to coach on the fly as much as possible as position coaches because you don't want to stop an entire practice and have 12 guys stand around while you're just giving instruction to one guy. So you try to coach on the fly and do it as fast as possible. But that feedback is essential. Keep giving the feedback. Last thing I'll say about a position coach, I developed closer relationships with the guys who I was coaching as a position coach. Again, I was a position coach for 10 years than I did in any other role. Because again, it's a small group and you're with those guys every day and you're coaching just those guys every day. You have time during the practice to ask them about their home life, how they're doing in school, what music they like. We would always talk about music. Music is one of those subjects where you can universally bond with people. Everybody likes music in some way, shape, or form, and you can always find a commonality or some common ground there. We would talk about music a lot. You're just getting to know them as people, and those relationships last a long time, particularly when you find success. I was fortunate to be a position coach with a program that won multiple state championships. And those kids will take those memories for them for the rest of their lives. And when we see them, a lot of those guys are now in their 40s, and we see them, and it's still, big dap and a hug, and you fall right back into just some of the things you talked about when they were 16 and 17 years old. So loved being a position coach. I loved it. But after 10 years, you feel like you've learned enough and you're ready to step up to the next level. And usually then the next level means coordinator. And so I became a coordinator. I was a coordinator for a long time, offensive coordinator, called plays both as just a coordinator and also in a role as a head coach. And when you step up into the coordinator role, your primary responsibility now is scheme and preparing an entire unit, the offense or the defense, for an upcoming opponent. Your job is to figure out how you're going to execute your offense or your defense against an opponent on a weekly basis. It starts with deciding what scheme you're going to run. As a coordinator, there's lots of different schemes you can choose from. And there's generally two ways that you can land upon one. You can say, hey, I'm a system guy. I have a system I love. I believe in that system. It's the West Coast offense. It's the air raid. It's at the high school level sometimes. It's the wing T, whatever it might be. And you say, I'm going to run this system. And then I'm gonna find guys that can execute it, et cetera. Or, and I think this is a little more common at the lower levels of football, where oftentimes you don't get to choose your personnel. You adapt your scheme to your players. That's something that I've done, throughout my career. I mean, I've run a 12 and 21 pro style offense with an old school fullback where we're slamming the ball at people, and it's power and it's counter gap and it's ISO and it's boot off of that. And we've been that offense. I've been a 5 wide spread, no huddle offense. What do you got? What can you do with the personnel that you have? That's a big thing as a coordinator. You got to make that decision. And then on a weekly basis, your job is to scout the opponent and figure out how you would want to attack them. How are you going to implement your scheme against what they do? And that involves another whole set of calculations. What are they running defensively, right? Are they an even front, an odd front? What are our best run looks against those particular fronts? What are our best formations? Oftentimes in the process as a coordinator, you start with formations. You start with how can we line up in a way that's going to create some sort of an advantage for us. Maybe it gives us leverage on them, meaning, hey, they're a 4-4 team, and we want to try to unbalance them. A 4-4 is a balanced defense. And so a common way to attack a balanced defense is to unbalance them. What does that mean? Get into a lot of 3-by-1 sets or tackles over or unbalanced heavy sets, right? Use leverage as an advantage. If they're a 3-stack team, we don't see a lot of 3-stack anymore, but that was all the rage for a while there when so many offenses were going to spread schemes. You absolutely want to unbalance them. You want to because that 3 tech lines up or their 3 down lineman, that 3rd down lineman lines up over the offensive tackle. And so we would get into tight end wing sets and get great looks to run sweep because you got great down blocks against the 3-stack. So, you have to think, how are we attacking them? Can I formation them in a way that creates a matchup advantage? Can I get our best guy on their worst guy from a formational perspective? Can I shift in motion to create those matchups? Hey, where's the weak link? How can I attack the weak link on their defense? And then obviously, you think about your best players and how to put them into advantageous positions. How can I scheme my best players into good looks against that particular opponent? As you can imagine, being a coordinator involves a ton of film work. You are living in the so-called film room. I mean, you are watching film constantly. Now that we are able to watch film on our phones, that means you can watch it anywhere. I could be sitting at the mechanic, getting my car fixed, and I'm doing film work because I've got my phone and my notebook. As a coordinator, I don't think I went anywhere without a notebook. I had a notebook everywhere because you hear authors talk about this, that they carry notebooks around because they never know when an idea is going to pop into their head and they just want to write it down. Well, as a coach or as a coordinator, the same thing is true. You never know when the inspiration will hit you and you think of something and you write it down. I couldn't tell you how many spiral notebooks I have that are literally filled front to back with diagrams and notes. I mean, it's dozens of them. I have many of them in a filing cabinet at my house. And sometimes I'll go back into them and I'll look through them. And the funny thing is, if I'm going back to 2006, my first year as a coordinator, it's all the same schemes. I'm still looking at counter gap in 2006. But in 2006, when we were a 21 personnel fullback based offense, we're running counter gap, with a fullback and a pulling guard. A couple of years later, 2009, we were a spread no huddle team. We had a great quarterback and some really good wide receivers, and not particularly great at the running back position. And we said, well, we're going to throw the heck out of the ball. We're still running counter gap, but it was GT Reed with a guard and a tackle pulling out of a 10 personnel spread set and the QB with the option to run the ball off of it. It's the same stuff. You recycle the schemes, but you do things differently from a personnel perspective. Last thing I'll say about a coordinator. The thing about that makes a coordinator hard is you're calling plays. And I'm not going to get into play calling right now. That's a whole other podcast. We're definitely going to have that podcast, The Art of Play Calling, later on down the line. But as a play caller, you do the best that you can to try to prepare so that you don't have to think of everything off the cuff. You have a call sheet. You have it organized situationally. You think about the situation you're in. You go to the section of the call sheet that addresses that situation. You pick your play. But many times it's instinctual. And because it is, you have to live and die with the decisions that you make. And when they work out, it is one of the most exhilarating feelings in the world as a coordinator. When you come up with like the big play call that decides a game. I can think about a season opener we had a couple years ago where on the second play of the game, the second play of the season, our starting quarterback, who had taken like 90% of the reps throughout the summer because it was his first year as a starter and we wanted to give him as many reps as possible, he gets hurt and he's knocked out of the game. 2 plays in, and now we got to play the backup, and we're scrambling all game long. And thank God we were great on defense. We did a great job on defense, and we're trailing. I think we're trailing 7-6 late in the game, and we needed, we didn't have a great field goal kicker. We're inside the red zone, and it was 3rd and long, and we called a screen, and you never screen in the red zone. But the way they were rushing the passer, they were blitzing us every 3rd down. I thought, I think we can catch him. And we screened it to our tailback, and boom, he went into the end zone for 6. We ended up winning that game. And man, afterwards, you feel so exhilarated because you're like, damn, I dialed up the right call in the right moment. But man, when the opposite is true, you just have to live with that, and you never put it to bed. I can still think about a playoff game way back in 2008 where we went to overtime. And in overtime, had the opportunity to win it. The other team scored. The other team kicked a field goal to take a 3-point lead. Now we get the ball back. We score, we win. And on the very first play of overtime, we were an on-the-ball team. I saw a look I loved. I said, "Bam, it's a shot play, right?" And I thought to myself, "Oh, call the shot play right now." They're giving us a look. If we call this play, it's 6. It's 6. And then I said to myself, but it's 1st down. I don't want to be in 2nd and long. Let's run the ball here on 1st down, and we'll come back to it on 2nd down. Stupid, because you're not going to get the same look. We run the ball on 1st down, and we fumble, and the game's over, and we lose. And I've never forgotten about that because it was a stupid decision in the moment where I was too conservative, and I didn't go for it. And you will think about that stuff forever. Forever. Finally, head coach. And I'll do this quick because I don't want to get this, into a massive podcast here today where we go on forever. And we can come back to each one of these. Actually, I feel like we should come back to each one of these and shine a bit of a brighter light on it. So maybe we let today's podcast be an overview, and then we really dive deep on each of these roles as we go. Head coach. When you are ready to become a head coach, you have to have a sense of how to run a program. You have to feel like I know how to be in charge of a program. You have to feel as though you're ready to step away from, to a degree, away from being the X and O guy, the hands-on with your position group guy, and more into a management position, because that's really what being a head coach is. It's like management. You're an administrator as much as anything else. You are in charge of a program. You are the face of the program. You represent the program to the community, to the school, right? You have to determine the culture of the program. Who are we going to be? What are we going to stand for? What are we going to represent? I was a head coach for 14 years. In the beginning, we kicked around a bunch of different slogans. I think the first one we started with was "Win the Day." We were not a very good program. I inherited a program coming off of back-to-back 2-8 seasons. I knew we weren't going to be great out of the gate, although I did make a mistake my first year and tried too much to win football games when I should have been focused more on building a culture. But once that lesson was learned and we leaned into building a culture, it became "Win the Day" was our slogan, which meant like, hey, we just got to try to get better every day. We can't worry about winning championships or anything like that. We're not very good yet. Let's just focus on improvement. And that was big for us for a couple of years. Every day we drilled down on getting a little bit better every day. And a couple of years in, so we found ourselves in a position where we thought we can win football games now. We against good teams. I'm not talking about beating bottom feeders. Like, we can compete with good teams. And then we changed our slogan. And ultimately, for the bulk of my head coaching career, we had 3 basic rules we lived by. And as a head coach, it's your job to determine, what is the foundation of your program going to be? What are you going to live and die on? And it was these 3 principles. Every kid in the program had to know these 3 things. We could stop a kid in the hallway and say, "Hey, give me our 3 principles." And if he didn't know it, if he couldn't recite it off the top of his head, he was running extra at practice. You had to live by these things. right? And the first one was have a next play mentality. Like we're going to make sure that we don't dwell on the good or the bad in a football game. We are going to have a next play mentality and we're going to play as hard as we can every single play and then move on and do the same on the next play. The other one was, do your job. Do your job. Like, don't worry about doing anybody else's job, right? Just don't worry about, hey, who's blocking that guy? Don't worry about who's covering that guy. Do your job. If we get 11 guys on the field together doing their job to the best of their ability, we're going to be all right. And the third one was, I think something that is simple to say, hard to do. And that was always have a great attitude and effort. The two things you can control more than anything else are your attitude and your effort. You can't control how big you are. You can't, for the most part, control how fast you are, but you can control your attitude and your effort. And you feel you have a great attitude and you give great effort, you're going to put yourself in the conversation. And if we get 60 guys on a team adhering to those principles, we're going to be all right. And as a head coach, you have to decide, is that, what are you going to build your program on? What is the bedrock upon which you're going to build a program? I didn't know all these things right away. I didn't know how to deal with administrators or the community or parents. You learn a lot of it as you go. But I think the thing that you have to remember as a head coach is this. You always have to think about what's best for the program, even when that means making hard decisions. My last year as a head coach, I ended up benching a senior quarterback whose father happened to be the vice principal at the high school and my supervisor as a social studies teacher for a playoff game and started a freshman. And I got a lot of heat for that. And I mean, there's people who won't talk to me today because of that. And ultimately it worked out. We scored 42 points and we won a playoff game with a freshman quarterback. But I just felt the direction we were headed, we needed to make that change. And that I agonized over that change. I feel bad today about the ramifications of that change because I know that young man who had to sit, that was a tough thing for him. But ultimately, you have to do the thing that you know is going to serve the program best. And then you live with those decisions. There is so much more involved. There's so much more that we can talk about when we talk about being a head coach or being any of these coaches. But again, to recap, as a position coach, you are primarily concerned with the development of your group. As a coordinator, you are primarily concerned with implementing a scheme and a strategy that is going to help you win football games. And you have to fit that scheme and that strategy to the available talent that you have. And as a head coach, you are interested in all of it, but primarily you set the tone and the culture of your program. You got to wear 3 different hats in those 3 different roles. All right, man, I know I rolled for like 22 minutes there or whatever it was. But boy, I could talk about this all day long. Let's revisit this conversation at some point on an individual basis. Let's do a show down the road where we talk just about being the position coach, just about being the coordinator, just about being the head coach. I think these are worthwhile conversations. And I thank you for listening. As always, really appreciate everybody tuning in to the podcast here at the Fans First Sports Network. We're doing well, man. Our downloads are up 50% over where they were a year ago. So I appreciate everybody tuning in. All right, until Friday, our hot route guest, Pez, is back from Pez's Picks, and you know that is always entertaining. I'll see you then. Have a great day, everybody.